What is up, guys? It is Chris here with Crew3 Podcast, and today we're taking a look at a spicy Mardu list that we've kind of whipped up here. We're fresh currently off the paper release of Ikoria, so it's been out online for a little while, but just recent released on paper. This deck here is going to use a lot of Ikoria cards, and it's very budget friendly. So if you want to try something like this, mostly it's going to cost you the investment in the lands. Not a bad investment considering, this is a non-rotating format, so lands are a good investment really in any non-rotating format. The rest of these are pretty much commons and uncommons. So this is a Lurrus deck, so we're going to focus on what we can get from that. Most of these cards have seen play either in Standard or in Limited. This is mostly a port of the Standard kind of Boros cycling deck that's very, very popular. There is a Mardu cycling deck that I actually prefer to play, and this is more of a direct port from that. So we're going to skip going over just the stats and stuff of a lot of the cards that are Standard legal, and instead I'm going to focus on what we do get from moving this to Pioneer. The first huge upgrade you get is the lands, right? You get some nice speed lands, you get some of the pain lands, which are beneficial here because our cycling costs are all colorless, right? Other than that, we get this card from the Amonkhet block called Flameblade Adept. This was popular in the modern version of the deck called Hollow One, and this is going to be a early threat that's going to beat down this deck. It's not something we're going to churn and burn quite as much as you really want to find a strategic turn for your cycling. I guess I'll go in more on that in a minute. The other card we're going to get is Vile Manifestation, another card from the Amonkhet block which featured cycling. This is a very, very powerful addition to the deck. It's a 2-mana 0/4, but it gets +1/+0 for each other card with cycling in our graveyard. As you'll be able to see, most of our cards have cycling, pro tip, and it itself has cycling too. So this one's a little bit awkward to cycle. We want most of our cards to have cycling 1. Thankfully, most of them do. But a card like Easy Prey, which I'll explain why that's there in a minute, has cycling 2. This has cycling 2, but hopefully we're playing this, right? And if this is like number, 2 or 3 on the board and you don't want to overinvest, you could be cycling the other ones, but our curve out really want to be like playing threats on turn 1 and 2, and then turn 3 we pretty much want to spend the whole turn cycling if that's an option, maybe casting a removal spell. But Flameblade Adept is, it's worse here than it was in the Hollow One deck because we a lot of times are so able to grind because of our Lurrus that the pressure this puts on because it doesn't keep its stats, unlike Vile Manifestation, which obviously gets a permanent boost for cyclers. This one's just a nice menace threat that can help you beat down early against decks that are trying to go a little bit bigger, right? So if you haven't played as much Pioneer as we have, Ruckman's been grinding a ton of Pioneer recently. I think he played against 10 Lurrus decks in a row on Pioneer Moto, so this deck can be very well tuned, in my opinion, to whatever your local metagame is whenever we're able to play live Magic again safely. So I like this deck that it attacks the format in a lot of different ways, right? So explaining what some of these cards do, like why they're here, not necessarily what they do, but Draenith Healer, because there's so much like Lurrus burn out there, is really, really nice. This in combination with Zenith Flare is really going to win us the game in those situations. We're only running 2 Zenith Flare because we really only need to cast 1 a lot of the time to win us the game. We don't want to be drawing all kinds of Zenith Flares when this format, because of Lurrus, because there's so many Lurrus decks, is actually very, very grindy. So we've got the advantage against some of the other like Aristocrats decks because we've got a Valiant Rescuer which can come up the board. Easy Prey is a very good removal spell in a format with a lot of Lurrus. It doesn't kill Lurrus itself, and so there may be an argument for, as you guys play with this deck more and tune it, switching out some of the random stuff for some more consistent removal, but go for blood. Most of our cards, if done properly, will trade or kill a Lurrus, a buffed up Flourishing Fox, a cycled Flameblade Adept. It takes 2 cycles, and then we can trade this for a Lurrus if that's what we want to do. But Easy Prey is a Scavenging Ooze killer, which is a big one. Obviously, we don't want to see a Scavenging Ooze against this deck because we're really counting on cards being in our graveyard for Zenith Flare, for Vile Manifestations buffs, just in general. So one thing, I think Call of the Death Dweller is very, very insane in this deck. Most of the time we want to be getting back our Lurrus, but because we're putting cards in the graveyard at a much faster rate than our opponents will, because we're going to be cycling a ton and getting onboard buffs from them, using this to get back our Lurrus is going to be insane. If for some reason you've drawn both of them, feel free to use one to get back like an early threat that got killed Because most of the time when these threats get killed, our advantage is that we can get them back, right, with our Luris and our Call of the Death Dweller. We've got some reach with Memory Leak here, which will help us fight the other big deck of the format, which is the Yorion decks. I think we're a little bit softer to those than we are the opposing Luris decks because we've got so much interaction, so many random tokens, and then a big finisher and Zenith Flare to just go over the top to kill our opponent. So I really like what this deck offers as far as that. So just keep in mind, again, some of the early strategies are you don't necessarily want to just be cycling early for no reason. If you need lands, because we only play 20, that's an argument, right? But other than that, if you've got a pretty sweet hand, save off cycling, play early threats, even if it's a turn where you don't play threats and you just want to, play a Blood Crypt tapped because you've got like a Flourishing Fox and you're about to just go crazy, or hey, you know what, I'm going to play a Flourishing Fox and then a second Flourishing Fox, or a Flourishing Fox and then a Flameblade Adept, and turn 2 take the turn off. You don't always have to be like, cycling for one. If on turn 2 we played a Flameblade Adept, turn 2 we played a Flourishing Fox, may not be as worth it because we want to be doing more cycling in a turn to make sure that our Flameblade Adept is going to be as powerful as it can be. We would miss 1 damage in that situation, but typically it's better to wait and do your cycles in a combo when you've got more cycling activators in play. I just see a lot of people, especially in Standard, just cycle for the heck of it and not pay attention to what value that cycling gives to us. You'll be able to cycle at any time. So maybe something changes and you actually need to keep your Easy Prey, you need to keep your Go for Blood. Waiting until the coast is clear is going to be a big one. Obviously, Valiant Rescuer makes things a little bit different because that makes you want to spread out your cycles to get tokens. But hey, it's a threat that kind of takes over the game. Drana Stinger obviously will help ping our opponent. So I think this deck gets a lot of tools out of the sideboard. One thing like you really get is Damping Sphere, in case your local metagame has more of the Lotus Breach type decks. You can play a Scrap Heap Scrounger for like super grindy games where you just don't mind throwing this away because you've got so many creatures. Sorcerer's Spyglass is a big one because there's a 1-mana artifact out there right now, Soul Guide Lantern, I believe, that is exiling graveyards. And between Soul Guide Lantern and Jace activations, this is a prime card to have in our sideboard to be able to side in that also plays well with Luris. That'll let us stop getting Soul Guide Lantern or getting us Jace into the game. These are obviously not necessarily one-ofs. You play as many as you want. Slaughter Game's another fine one because it's a sorcery. It plays around Luris. Luris only cares about permanent cards. So Slaughter Games is really only good against the Yorion Inverter combos. Right? Like we don't care about getting rid of opponents' random cards. This card doesn't cycle. It's very clunky. There's really only one reason to play this, and it's if you're really tired of losing to Inverter, if you really want to get them. And even then, it may not be worth it. You can play some Thoughtseize on the board if you want to. Obviously, that'll up your budget here, but if you've got them, hey, feel free to play them. You might even play 1 or 2 in the main deck. And then Scarab Feast, another solid one in the Luris Mirrors to exile their best cards. Right, like this is probably not going to get everything. Maybe it does, but another important one there. One thing you could do if you really wanted to get cute would be to play Sweltering Suns. If you wanted to go over the top of some Luris. If you really want to play like a more controlling version, though, there has been some Jeskai cycling out there that focuses more on playing Zenith Flares. You'll notice we're only playing 2 Zenith Flare and 2 Call of the Death Dweller. We're going to draw so many cards. Odds are we're going to see these anyway, and we really don't want a bunch in our opening hands clunking things up when, if we just all we do is cycle for the first 3 turns, we're probably just going to die in this format. We really want to be seeing some more of our threats and use this as a finisher. Having 1 in the opening hand isn't bad just to make sure that you've got it, because hopefully it wins you the game, but there's a lot of Luris Mirrors going around, so a lot of times the ground gets pretty gummed up, and what you're trying to do is sneak in some Flameblade Adept, make your creatures big enough where you don't care, right? Like they're just bigger than your opponent's random stuff, and you can sneak in like an Easy Prey to blow out a double block or something like that. Go for Blood is a sorcery. One thing to really consider. That's gotten me sometimes when I was like, oh, this is an instant. It is not. It is a sorcery. You cannot do it instant speed. This card's overperformed. It cycles for 1, and obviously in the matches where it's good, it's really good. And then I've kind of already gone over what Call of the Death Dweller does. We've got 20 lands here. Again, your big benefit to the Pain lands is going to be that, our colorless cycling makes this pretty good. Otherwise, we've got some pretty standard. The fast lands, we've got, the allied colors don't have their Pain lands yet. They're really limited on the lands you can cover. So you do play some Blood Crypt here, but that's not too bad given it's the only one that So that being said, overall, you're looking to either take an aggressive or a mid-range strategy, depending on what your opponent's doing. But your advantage of having Call of the Death Dweller to get your Luris back, or being able to get back one of your cycle is going to just give you infinite value, or even just doing this to get back a Flourishing Fox and a Dranith, Stinger, or Healer, or Rescuer, or a Vile Fantasy. You're getting a ton of value back with your Call of the Death Dweller. So. And then obviously you've got the best finisher in the game right now. This card is just insane, and you will see when you start doming your opponent for 11 and killing them, or against like an Aristocrats kind of deck where they're paying you for a lot. Hey, use it. If you take out their Luris and gain you 11 life, you'll probably have the board presence to win after that. So. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching. You can check us out on Twitch at Crew3MTG, where we stream random decks, and I'm sure this one will come up. We a lot of times stream viewer decks from our Discord, where you can submit decks for us to play, and then obviously check out our weekly podcast for all the Pioneer content you could ever want. Our next video is likely to be something non-Pioneer, but we shall see. So if you guys find some changes you'd like to make to this deck, feel free to leave the suggestions in the comments. We love it. Obviously try and be constructive, what you would cut, what you think about it. We'd love to just talk with you guys and see some friendly banter there. So all right, we'll see you guys in the next video.